1.7 billion euros of defense capital in a single month. A drone company worth 3.5 billion, founded only 2 years ago. The largest European defense IPO in history. A rocket company that raised 270 million and still cannot reach orbit. And a laser fusion startup from Darmstadt that just closed the largest Series A the global fusion industry has ever seen, turning it into a unicorn. This is the defense capital supercycle, and we're going to break it down for you. This is Startuprad.io. I'm Jörn Menninger, joining you from Frankfurt am Main. This is the June 2026 Startup News episode covering everything that was going on in the German, Swiss and Austrian startup scene, collectively known as DACH or GSA, between May 19th and June 29th. Production date is today, June 29th. We are going live on July 2nd. All news not included will be published in our summer wrap-ups. We expect this time 2 episodes to drop September 3rd and 7th, the US Labor Day, as is our tradition. This admittedly is the first solo news episode. For those who have listened for a while, you will notice that I'm on my own. Chris Farnbach, my co-host and co-founder, has left the show. I want to keep this brief. Chris built the show with me from the very beginning, and his contribution is in every single episode we have ever made. But the show continues, and the signals this month demand our full attention. He, by the way, stays on as an advisor, and of course our reliable back office team also remains unchanged. The signals this month are extraordinary. In a single month, DACH produced more than 1.7 billion euros of defense-linked capital, 500 million for Stark's drones, 270 million for ESA's rockets, 500 million for a new European Defense Growth Fund, and the largest European defense IPO in history, KNDS, up to 18 billion euros. Beyond Defense, Focused Energy raised $270 million for laser fusion in the largest Series A the global fusion industry has ever seen. A new German unicorn from Darmstadt, backed by RWE, a German utility, and the German government. Defense technology is no longer a sector within European venture capital. It is right now the dominant category. I'm calling this the defense capital supercycle. But there is the structural tension. ESA Aerospace raised 270 million euros on June 9th. 6 days later, on June 15th, unfortunately, the rocket launch was scrubbed. The money moved faster than the rocket. That is kind of the story of this month. The capital infrastructure for European defense tech is complete. The question is whether the engineering can match. Let's look a little bit into the macro numbers. Germany has deployed 4.04 billion US dollars. Sorry for the confusion in the currencies, but that's the way it is here in Europe. 188 rounds tracked through June. Through Traction report, a 20.7% drop year on year from 2025. That's actually a reversal from the 11.6% growth we reported through May. Note, there will always be conflicting numbers from different data providers, but you'll notice the trend. The defense budget of Germany stands at 82.6 billion euros, projected to almost double to 152 billion by 2029. Also, the acquisitions have hit 177 through June, and Germany has produced 4 new unicorns in 2026 already. There's Sapiens, there's the already discussed Stark, there is Focused Energy we'll talk about, and our former guest Finn, Well, we'll spend a little bit on the end. We have 3 predictions on record for this month. Number 1, stock reaches a 10 billion euro valuation within 18 months. 2, the KNDS IPO prices above 15 billion and triggers at least 1 more European defense listing within 12 months. Prediction number 3, ESA Aerospace reaches orbit before December 31st this year. Let's talk startups. As already mentioned, Stark, this is our story number 1, founding to 3.5 billion in about 2 years. Stark, Berlin-based, founded 2024. On June 23rd, Stark raised 500 million euros in a Series C, co-led by Sequoia Capital and Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, the NATO Innovation Fund, Döpfner Capital, Project A, and Air Street Capital came alongside. The valuation sits above 3.5 billion. Let me put that in context. Stark is approximately 2 years old. 2 years from founding to 3.5 billion euro valuation. Total raised since founding roughly 640 million euros. That is the fastest trajectory in DACH startup history. It kind of tickles memories for me of quick delivery, but this time they're pushed by macroeconomic and political forces. They're making this market fast and large due to demand across Europe, especially from the governments. The product is the Virtuous Loitering Munition, a strike drone with more than 130 kilometers of range and up to 90 minutes of flight, operating in a GPS-denied environment, meaning GPS signals are blocked. In February 2026, Stark won a 269 million euro Bundeswehr contract to equip the German armored brigade stationed in Lithuania. More than 80% of the new capital goes to research, development, and of course manufacturing. The target, thousands of systems every month. This is actually Sequoia's first lead investment in a German defense startup. When the largest venture firm in the world leads a German drone company's round, with Peter Thiel Fund co-leading, the signal is actually unambiguous. US growth capital is all in on European sovereign defense. And the structural point from our previous episode holds. The Bundeswehr contract came first. We talked about this. The venture capital followed the budget line. The sovereign customer premium was named in May and is compounding. News number 2, KNDS, Europe's largest defense IPO. On June 22nd, KNDS, the Franco-German tank and ammunition manufacturer, announced it will proceed with an IPO on the Paris and Frankfurt stock exchanges. Estimated valuations are between 15 and 18 billion euros. Germany is buying a 40% stake. France retains their 40% stake. About 20% goes to institutional investors. This is the largest European defense IPO in history. KNDS makes the Leopard 2 tanks, ammunitions used in Ukraine, and military vehicles for NATO allies. The listing is expected within weeks. Mid-July is the target. 2 things that matter here. That's why the IPO is in our startup news. First, the dual Paris-Frankfurt listing reinforces a trend we have been tracking. Frankfurt is becoming a default venue for European defense and industrial listings. KNDS choose Frankfurt. Bitpanda also choose Frankfurt. The IPO geography continues to shift away from London and New York. Second, Germany buying 40% of KNDS is not just a financial transaction. It is sovereign industrial policy. The German state is taking a direct ownership stake in a core defense manufacturer. This is the government side of the defense capital Supercycle. Public procurement creates the demand. Sovereign ownership secures the supply chain, and public markets do provide the exit. Our third news, the European defense capital stack. On June 18th, Early Bird Venture Capital and French investor AVP announced E2D. This is a 500 million euro growth fund for European defense and dual-use technology. About 20 companies, 25 million euro average tickets. Space, air, land, maritime. First close, June 30th. Here is why ED2 matters beyond just the headlines. It completes what I am calling the European defense capital stack. At the bottom, you have early stage funds that back defense startups at seed and Series A. In the middle, you now have E2D, a dedicated growth fund from around Series B and C stage. At the top, you have the late stage mega rounds, Helsing at 1.2 billion, Stark at 500 million. And now, for the first time, you have also public market exits, KNDS. 12 months ago, this stack did not exist. The complaint from European defense founders was always the same. We can get the seed money, but there's no growth capital and there's no exit. As of this month, all three layers are in place. The capital infrastructure is complete. Let us press our thumbs, like we do in Germany, that other complete capital stacks will develop pretty soon in the future. And there is a Franco-German signal buried in all of that. E2D is Early Bird, German, and AVP, French. KNDS, Franco-German.